As the sub descends, the ship holds its position above the dive site. The surface crew tracks the sub and relays navigational information to help guide the team toward the seep.
On the surface, our depth is 1756, 1756.
We get a range of bearings. I don't see the marker or anything.
Heading east, we go out into the mud. Do you have a better fix on us by any chance?
Bearing is 90 degrees, 090 range.
At this depth in the Gulf of Mexico, when you land on the ocean bottom, what you see is mud. And that's, as far as you look in any direction, that's basically what you would see. An occasional little animal here or there, sign of animals, but basically it's mud.
Okay, we're coming in now on a bunch of bacteria mats. We don't see any exposed hydrate yet.
The first sign of the seeps are mats made up of microscopic bacteria.
When you're talking about the cold seeps, the basis of the food chain is always bacteria. They are the organisms that are taking the methane or the sulfide and turning it into food, which everything else eats.
On the Earth's surface, green plants form the basis of the food chain. They convert sunlight into usable energy and serve as food for animals. But the sun never reaches hydrothermal vents in cold seeps. Here, specialized microbes create the basis for the food chain. Instead of sunlight, they convert chemicals such as methane, poisonous to most creatures, into their food. Primitive in form, but remarkably hardy, these microbes may be related to the first life ever to appear on Earth.
This is fine. There looks to me like there's hydrates everywhere around here.
The sub approaches a solid form of methane. Called a hydrate, it is created by cold temperatures and high pressure and stands out as either yellow or white. Bubbles of methane gas percolate up from the mud. These studies may help answer an important riddle about the seeps. What is the origin of methane?
From this side, which way is the current going?
It's coming from over there, yeah.
That should be good then.
The scientists need only a bubble or two, because the gas will expand on the way to the surface.
Oh, missed it. Got it.
Next, a tube of sediment may provide clues to the chemistry of what feeds this alien world.
Jesus.
Particularly intriguing to scientists is that these microbes have evolved an entirely new way to exist, converting toxic chemicals into nutrients.
Very well worked. This is very cool. Another ice worm hydrate. What we've got here is a piece of methane hydrate, or methane ice, which we see exposed in the Gulf of Mexico at a number of the sites that we're visiting. What's unique about this one is that it's completely covered with an animal we discovered a few years ago and nicknamed ice worms. But this is only the second time I've ever seen this kind of a concentration.
During a dive in 1997, Chuck made this extraordinary discovery. He came upon something totally unexpected, a creature new to science, living within the ice itself.
We looked off in the distance and saw a little band of yellow and white coming out of the seafloor, and we thought it was a hydrate, which we'd seen before. And we came in to take a closer look, and where we found a big surprise. This is like two kinds of ice there, yeah? Got a white ice. Look at that. Wow. That stuff is wow.
Is there shrimp or something on there? No crabs?
I don't think. Is that something alive?
Look, it's a what?
It is movement. It is something. Those are some kind of animals that are living in there. Look at those guys, David. Those are hydrate creatures. They are awesome. No one even suspected that methane ice could be a habitat for an animal. The ice worms themselves were completely unknown to science. It was a new species of worm which has since been named Hesiasica methanicola.
That is too weird.
After studying the worms, Chuck concluded that they feed on bacteria. The astonishing fact is that life can adapt and thrive in a hostile environment of ice, poison gas, and crushing ocean pressures.
Bye-bye.
The submersible moves farther into the seep, toward the focus of Chuck's research, the ancient tube worms.
Yeah, where we are is some tube worms, but this isn't a known spot.
When you come up on one of these cold seep communities, there's no doubt that you've arrived, because immediately there's a very high biomass of tube worms, bacterial mats, mussels that can be seen from a distance, and once you're in the communities, in all directions.
He's tipping it up.
Tube worms provide structure in this ecosystem. Bacteria live inside them in a symbiotic relationship, and their thickets shelter a myriad of animals. As many as 50 different species live in and around each bunch of tube worms.
We often talk about the tube worm aggregations as tube worm bushes. They're not a bush in any normal sense of the word. They're actually thousands of animals that all swam here as individual larvae, settled in the same place, and grew up together. Each one with its own heart, its own brain, its own blood system.
Now Chuck has found
One closest to us is the one I want to try to grab first.
These are real worms, animals, not plants. And removing these delicate individuals is difficult. They root themselves deep into the mud.
on the surface. We have everything on board and pretty well secured. It can request permission to leave bottom.
Yeah, Dan, you have permission to surface.
Every minute spent on the ocean bottom is precious. The fruit of a year's worth of study and planning is about to surface.
The traps will look like, I think the fish would have evolved by now.
Bringing the deep diving submersible back on board is risky business. The sub is most vulnerable to damage when bobbing near the stern of its massive mother ship. The scientists are eager to get their hands on these creatures from another world.
How many interstitial samples?
Lots. Interstitial 6.
6?
6, and we got 9 up above.
Excellent. All right.
This is the first really good gas sample we got on the cruise. I needed it bad. It's going to tell us the origin of the gas, whether it's related to oil or to bacterial activity.
Are you just carrying them?
Just carried like that.
Do you want us to take out some of this cold water before we put in the worm, or just keep it up here?
Just go ahead and get some root tissue.
These are living samples. The researchers hope to learn enough to cultivate them in the lab.
Try to work with the bigger ones in there if you can, and as you're pulling it apart, see if you can be gentle, because I think we got an intact small clump that might just live. I'm not sure what else. Give Charmy first. Coming out to sea and collecting the animals is certainly the high point for many of these students' projects. This is where it really all pays off, where they get to come out, see the environment firsthand, touch the animals, get involved with the samples. This is why I do this as well. I like working in the lab, I like being a professor, I enjoy writing papers. But if it wasn't for the cruises and the dives in the submarine and seeing the new environment, I think I'd look for a different line of work.
This is exciting stuff. We're the mud scientists, or mud mafia. right, so that's suitable for you.
Profile. I guess we can take that one.
Okay.
Which one is that?
This is
number one.
This is number 3.
Okay.
This mud is important to me because I've been studying the site for about 5 years, and I've always been short of samples. So what just happened is that I'm no longer short of samples. This is loaded with gas. There's oil floating on the surface, those black dots. That's crude oil. You can see gas bubbles coming out of it. So I got to get the lid on this beast right now. Just like we'd put some tomatoes away for the winter.
Okay.
It's an old technique, but it really works well. The smell of success. Been trying to get samples from this place for a long time.
Roger's easy to please.
The mud mafia.
A little bit of mud. The kind of stuff most of us wash off our bodies.
Right.
We'll keep Roger busy for weeks, if not
Others
months.
are far more demanding on you.
Valuable to Roger as a scientist, this methane-rich mud also holds enormous promise for the oil and gas industry. It may be the next black gold.
We're running out of oil and gas, and no matter what we do, we cannot continue to produce energy at the same rate that we have in the past. Oil will be phased out. Methane is clean burning, environmentally sound, and that's going to become the next major source of energy for the planet.
Some estimate that methane hydrates contain more combustible energy than all of the planet's oil, gas, and coal reserves combined. The potential for profit has expanded methane seeps from an academic subject into a prime focus for energy exploration. The same phenomena found in the Gulf of Mexico, cold methane seeps, have been located more than 2,000 miles away, off the coast of Oregon. The Woods Hole oceanographic research vessel Atlantis and its submersible Alvin ply the Pacific in search of seeps. The mission is led by geochemist Miriam Kastner and microbiologist Doug Bartlett of Scripps Institution of Oceanography. In the very same waters, other research groups probe the cold seeps.
2 other vessels are here also to do some research on hydrate. One of them is the international drilling ship, which is a drill ship. It can drill very deep into the sediment in very deep water. It's the only of a kind in the world. And at the same time, there is a ship here from Germany, and they are very interested in these hydrates, and they are exactly trying to work in the same area we are trying to work, just to show you it's in an international interest in this new potential, maybe energy source of methane.
These ships may represent the first stages of an effort to mine methane seeps.
Here's a huge untapped fuel source. Will we really be able to practically recover it? Well, there's a lot of people, a lot of countries that are interested in seeing if that's the case, but we still need to know more about where they are, how rich the deposits of methane hydrate are, how stable they are. Is it going to be feasible for us to recover them?
Chief scientist Kastner and Bartlett dive in the Alvin, one of the most famous research subs. In 1977, it was the first to dive on tube worms and hydrothermal vents. In 1995, it carried the first ocean explorers to the resting place of the Titanic.
Roger that. Rudder left, right.
In just 1 week, the team will make 5 difficult dives. Their goal, nothing less than to bring back microbes, mud, and gas embedded in blocks of frozen methane.
So today we are going to go to the top of the summit of the Southern Hydrate Ridge, where we know hydrates exist, and we know there are some cold seeps there, and all the biology is associated with it. So we're going to go to a central part of the summit and survey a 200 meters radius.
We know a lot about life on the surface of the planet. We don't know nearly as much about the nitty-gritty details of life down on the seafloor and below the seafloor.
All right, have a good one.
Sealing the hatch. Bridge, we are ready and standing by to launch on your word.
Okay, the bridge is ready, and we have a pretty good swell running out there this morning, so you may commence the launch.
Beneath a skin of fiberglass, Alvin's titanium sphere can transport a crew of 3, 2.5 miles beneath the sea.
The main is off, take it up. D-frame is out. Roger that.
Yeah.
Extension, unlatch, and lower way wind.
One can get a sense of claustrophobia thinking of jumping into this tiny little submersible, being very cramped 7, 8, 9 hours, but the view is great. It's a great ride.
Dampers off. Roger, dampers.
Need an altitude, permission to dive when the swimmers are clear. Over. Your altitude is 750 meters. You are clear diving, the swimmers are clear.